Greetings of the day to all the other participants, depending upon the time zone of your countries. I, Dr. Akhil Syed, the Pro Vice Chancellor of Gokul Global University, cordially welcome you on this August program, which is going to be a wonderful event in collaboration with India and Brazil, and that too, the collaboration is going to be of discussion, that dialogue between these two prominent countries, two developed country, about social, legal as well as technological aspect. Ours is a state university established in 2018, and we do have various faculties, not only the law faculty, the faculty to which I belong. We do have engineering faculty, so we do have technological manpower and UG and PG programs. We do have, of course, law faculty, arts, commerce, and also medicine faculty. We do have a traditional Indian medicine system, that is what we call Ayurveda, nursing, physiotherapy, and also a science faculty. So it's a kind of a multidisciplinary university, and that is what we do practice here, the multidisciplinary as well as interdisciplinary courses and the research. So I was very much happy to learn when I learned that Professor Thiago is organizing such a wonderful conference, which is multidisciplinary in nature, where the science and technology and social aspects are being coupled, are being discussed along with the law. So it's a very good opportunity for all the paper presenters. But personally, I am not contributing to presentation, being an organizer in this particular event. But definitely, as we have discussed earlier, we will come out with the very good proceeding of the event, and that proceeding will not serve only the two of the country, India and Brazil, but I believe at international level it would have an acceptance and will open up the door for many of the other countries for such collaboration and do interdisciplinary work across the boundary. So with this note, I just conclude my speech here. I once again thank Professor Dr. Thiago for having a collaboration with Indian University and choosing our Gokul Global University. Thank you very much. I express my gratitude. Thank you to all.
Thanks so much, Dr. Akhil. Thanks so much for being here with us. Thanks so much for allowing this Gokul Global University are here organizing this event. I have a minor problem just right now, Dr. Akhil. Unfortunately, my audio was not working, so I will present once again the current universities in which are participating in this event. And kindly, I'd like to ask our guests to be a little more patient and so I can present everyone and say thanks once again to everyone who are here collaborating and organizing this fantastic event. First of all, once again, due to this audio problem that we have, I'd like to share everyone that we have at least 600 students in 4 different universities here in Brazil currently watching in a different room, each one in a different virtual room, in University Mackenzie Presbyterian University, in Catholic University of Santos, in Paulista University, and also in São Judas Tadeu University, and also on Federal University from Mato Grosso do Sul. 5 different universities, just recall here, are currently watching with about 600, at least with the current numbers that I have, 600 students are currently watching. Thanks so much for those students, and thanks so much also for everyone who is following up and on YouTube, especially saying hi on this morning to Mariana and Gabriela Gabriele, who are currently watching this event on YouTube. I'd like to say thank you for all the organizers, all the institutions who are organizing of this event, in special CEST, Society and Technology Study Center of Polytechnical School of Universidade de São Paulo, IGOAI, an international group of artificial intelligence based on UK. Thanks so much for my dear friend, Dr. Jassim Haji. Global AI Ethics Institute based on France. Thanks so much for Dr. Ato Montilovic and Emmanuel Guffi. ETHIKAI, based on Brazil. Thanks so much for Paola Cantarini and also to Professor Willis. And finally, thanks so much for Business School of AI. Thanks so much for Dr. Sudha, who kindly allow us to have the participation of the organization of a Business School of Artificial Intelligence. Also, I'd like to say thank you for all the institutions who are connected and organizing this event. Federal University of Mato Grosso do Sul, IMED, and with based on here on Brazil, Goku Global University, in which I'd like also to say once again, thanks so much for Dr. Rakil. It's an amazing partner of ours. Standford University, thanks so much, Sudha, once again, for allowing the participation of Standford University. Barcelona Technology School on Spain, thanks so much again, Sudha. University of Haparin in Iraq. Thanks so much for the current dean, Dr. Payman Ahmad, a dear friend of mine. Faculty of Law of the University of San Clement Odesky in Bitola, North Macedonia. Thanks so much for my dear friend Goran. Catholic University of Santos Presbyterian University, Mackenzie Presbyterian University here in Brazil. All those are a part of the organization of this event, and I'm so very, very happy for everyone who are part of it. I have a short message for Dr. recorded from Dr. Emmanuel Guffi, and I'd like to play it now as he is one of the organizers of this event, and Global AI Ethics Institute is one of the organizers of this event. So allow me to play it.
With you today for this great event. I'm really sad because I felt like with so many great speakers, I would have learned a lot about Brazil and India. However, I have total confidence in my friend Tiago and all the speakers and the Society and Technology Studies Center at the University of São Paulo, that they will do an amazing job. And I'm really proud that the Global AI Ethics Institute has been participating to the organization of this event. A short word about the Global AI Ethics Institute.
There is no audio.
We are, my friend Usmani and myself, co-founder and co-director.
So I'll try later to solve this problem. I'm so sorry for this technical difficulty, but I'm gonna try to solve it, and then we can hear the message from Dr. Emmanuel Guffi. So without further delays, I'd like to invite our first guest of this meeting. I'd like to invite Dr. Sudha Jamthe. She's an MBA. She's a fantastic researcher from Standford University. She holds a a talk show, and also engaged in several different activities. And first of all, she's an amazing person, an amazing researcher with a very, very rich curriculum. Thanks so much, Dr. Sudha, for being here with us. I'm so very excited. I'm so very happy and honored for your presence here with us. And I'm very, very happy also to present you to the general audience here in Brazil, all those students of mine of those 5 different universities here in Brazil. Thanks so much, Dr. Sudha. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been such an honor. Thank you, Divya, for introducing me to Dr. Thiago in the first place, and thank you, Thiago, for having me. And this amazing thing I love about your work is the collaboration, you know, not just like one group or 2 groups. This is how it's supposed to be done. So, you know, I don't think anybody else I know on earth who can pull this off with the diversity that you do. So I'm so honored to be here. Thank you. I'm not a doctor. I'm an MBA. I'm not a PhD. So I just want to make sure that, you know, I don't take false credit. I have some slides. Will I be able to share that on the screen? Yes.
Just one moment.
You can share it now, I guess. Let me see if everything is in order.
Just thank you. So I put together some slides just to, you know, people who are watching on YouTube or, you know, somewhere else who come back and watch it might want links and stuff. So I just for that I put, but I hope we'll have a rich discussion. You know, I'm looking forward to that. Okay. So I can present now, and it says my entire screen. I'll open a window. Are you able to see my screen?
No, not
yet. Okay.
Not yet.
Can't share screen. So I'm not going to share my screen. Shall I give you?
Yeah, I'd like to. Can you send the file to me?
If you want to do it, it's fine. I mean, it might make my life easy. Yeah. Let's see if you're able to see this.
There is a file here. Just let me take this. Just 1 second. Okay.
Yeah, anybody with the link can do that. So it should be okay. You're able to share. And while Thiago is presenting, I know our time is very precious, so I'm just going to start talking. So I'm Sudha Jamthe. J in my name is not silent. I come from working in technology industry for 3 decades, and I am a person who doesn't like to be tied to a title. So I've done like several different things, and I'm still in a search of where I can add value to add to the richness of what we are doing, especially by bringing technology to the world to do good. And anybody who's worked in technology industry knows that, you know, we always build something thinking it is going to solve a problem for somebody, and it's a double-edged sword. Somebody else might think of something else to do with it, which is not what we even conceived in the beginning. And so sometimes it might be good because we don't know, you know, you can just present, I think. You can just present, and then, or you can just skip slides, that's okay. And I've actually put my email here. It is sujamthe@businessschoolofai.com. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn later, and I hope that we will be able to present this in a journal also, so you might be able to connect with me there. And I'm hoping to connect with you all to, you know, to have a follow-up discussion on this. So next slide is just going to give my background. So, you know, I teach AI for product and business managers at the Stanford Continuing Studies. In fact, I have my course live online coming up from October 17, and it's open to the world because of the world of doing things online and live these days. I hope I will get, some of the 600 people who are watching might want to learn from my class, and maybe I will see you and you'll bring the rich perspective. And I specialize in technology. I come from a computer science engineering degree, but what I like to do is I would like to make sure that we demystify technology, and I focus on no-code AI, which makes sure that we focus on what is AI about and what are the different markets, what can we do with it. So that brings us to today's topic when we're talking about linguists and language, and that's the segment that I'm talking about here. And you'll see in a minute, I teach AI ethics at Barcelona Technology School, AI for bootcamp for product and business managers, which is at Stanford, and then I teach a variety of different AI courses and AI ethics courses at Business School of AI. And AI is one of those technologies which is different from what we have seen in the past. Can we just move forward, if you don't mind? Yes. Because we're talking about India and Brazil. I've been lucky to visit Brazil once, and I hope to come back. So I was thinking about, when we think about linguists and language, language AI is about one particular area of AI called natural language processing. That's how it started. And all AI is trained using data. And so instead of numbers, they said, what if we feed words? Can the AI understand language? Can the AI speak? Can it do text to speech? Can it do machine translation? That's the world we were operating in till recently, and that bucket is called natural language processing. And now we've gone to a more exciting and exhilarating area, which is called foundation models, where the AI is taking the same set of Wikipedia data, all kinds of books it can get fed as training data, but it is creating language. So it's not just taking language and say, okay, I understand, now I can translate this language for you to a different language, or I can understand and have a chat with you in a chatbot, which is where we were in the past. And now it is saying, okay, I can create marketing copy, I can create poetry, and especially you would have heard of one particular technology called GPT-3, which is basically saying, okay, we've created a language model, now it can understand all kinds of language and generate, instead of natural language processing, this is called natural language generation. So since we are talking about technology, I wanted to get us to a common place. So when we think of language, some of you might be thinking about chatbots and NLP, natural language processing. Some of you might have the excitement of, hey, GPT is letting us create language. Can it create language model for my language? That is where my research comes in, and why Thiago has invited me here today, because my research is in general inclusive AI. And if you look in my Google Scholar, most of my past work has been about inclusive AI in autonomous vehicles. So I look at, okay, the data inside the car, is that inclusive? And so now in recent times, I focused on language because that's the fastest growing area of AI. And with this whole language generation, it raises questions and opportunity of how are we going to bring all the languages into the world. Can anybody here, and maybe on somebody who's looking at this on YouTube, can you guess how many languages are in the world? And there's no right or wrong answer, because I had to Google it and I was shocked, because there are 7,100 languages in the world. And how many languages are available by, in any of the tech companies that are giving you in machine translation options? How many languages do you think are available in there? Does anybody have a guess on that? So originally this started very English-centered, and they said, okay, we'll teach the AI English and fed English language, right? And then they said, okay, now let us teach it translation. Let me add one more language. So they added actual translation content for 6 or 7 languages, which is very Western Europe centered. It's as if a person who knows only English, now they've been taught to learn Spanish, or they've been taught to learn Italian or German. And even within Spanish, let me tell you, I'm learning Spanish from Duolingo. There is no one Spanish. There are various different Spanishes, right? Based on whether I'm teaching in Barcelona and I want to talk to somebody there, or I'm visiting Mexico and I'm speaking Mexican. And if I go further down in the continent, I will have a Chilean version or different versions. And how do you teach the AI that just for one language? And so it's not just about the number of languages, then it adds to the complexity. Tiago, can you just move forward and this is a slide deck that I have out on Canva, and I'm happy to share the link. So, all the other content I have here, we can actually, share with people. So the one point I want to say is language, the way the AI is learning is about a bundle of words. That's how we are still today. And they said, these are words, and these words have this meaning, and these are the words that are in association with other words that gives us the context. So this is a word called eat, and now there are past tense and present tense and past participle of the same word. And then they say, okay, is the person eating or is the person being eaten? And that will give a context for it. And that is how the AI is in a very, very baby stage where it is learning language. And so back to my question on how many languages does the AI know today, still recently it was about 6 or 7 languages. And then the language technology scholars said, we are never going to reach the 7,100 languages. So we need to make the AI do deep learning, where we will just feed all the content of the language. We don't need to give it translation. Let it figure out the pattern and let it go learn. And so this is called zero-shot learning, and Google came up with this, and they came up with 100 languages that they support. This support doesn't mean that it is perfect, doesn't mean it does not make mistakes or it has great accuracy, but it can understand the language to some extent. And then now there's competition among technology companies, and Facebook has come with this thing called no language left behind model, which supports the similarly 200 models, 200 languages. So I think that's the extent. Think of 7,100 language, and we have 200 languages which are understood by the computer to some extent. Why does it matter? Because language is culture. And culture is language, which means the rich history of all of us, our context in which we operate and live, everything is in our language. And then language also has evolution, so it's not a static thing. So talking of India, actually I want to move forward because I put together one slide deck about India. I think it's the next one maybe, Tiago. Why should we care? No, because we get used to it. Can you move forward? Can you just keep moving? This is the 7,100 languages. Okay, this is my summary slide about India. So India is one of those countries, and I came from India, and I'm of Indian origin, and I live and work in Silicon Valley. And so there are 22 official languages that is recognized by the Constitution of India. And these are not various dialects of different languages. These are different languages which have their own history and literature and poetry, and they don't even have common words between different languages, or if there are common words, they might even mean different things unless they have derived from the same origin, from the same language tree. And linguists here would know that a language tree would have a set of related languages. So you hear Indian languages and say 22 official languages, but there are 3,000 languages that in surveys people have said, hey, this is my mother tongue, and there are about 3,000 plus languages. I believe it's 3,140 something number of languages. So now go back to how the AI is learning English and 100 other languages, and if you think about the richness of culture and history of people, how can we actually teach us, even focusing on India, how can we teach it 3,000 other languages? And out of that, they come from 4 different language trees. So this is, again, I have the data that I'm sharing here, that out of these languages, that 574 languages are Indo-Aryan languages, so they might have something like Sanskrit is one of the languages. It might have something in common with an European languages, one of the 7 languages the AI understands. Then there are 153 Dravidian languages, and my mother tongue Tamil is one of them. It doesn't have anything common in English. So when I learned English and Tamil, I had to learn them as 2 different things. But I learned it young enough as a child that I did not have to do a translation and think about it that way. And there are Austro-Asiatic languages, 65 of them, and Sino-Tibetan languages that are 226 languages. And I started with 3,000 languages, which means that's a lot more languages that is not even in the spectrum. So coming back to how AI is learning, AI is actually saying, okay, I'm going to learn this as bundle of words. So I hope today, as we are having this discussion about thinking about the legal aspect and social aspect of this of languages, I hope it will make us think about, how do we bring the different languages, what is happening. So I want to share one resource. I believe it is further down here. Tiago, if you move forward, this is where I'm saying how is natural language processing done, technology. Can we move forward furthermore? So the foundation models that I was talking about, they actually, there is one called DALL-E where you give it an English sentence and it will create an image. So that's slide 14, I believe. And, the easiest way for you to actually do test it out is because language is everywhere. AI is building language from us as training data. You can play with it even without having, it looks like a bunch of words on screen. Then you say, what does that mean? So the easiest way to go try this out, when I say, hey, AI is creating language, looks like very preposterous. So the easiest thing is if you go to Google search and you start just, enter any sentence and you can say, today I can, and as you type it, you will get a different response. I will get a different response. But one thing you would see is Google tries to guess the next best word that you're going to do. So as soon as you say today, it will try to finish the sentence and give you a choice. You say I can, and it will give you a bunch of words. And it goes on. So you can play with it each. And instead of saying I can, if you say I would, and it will give you a list, different set of words. So that is how it is trying to generate language based on what it has in its memory. So that's the easiest way to understand this whole concept of foundation models and where we are going with all that. So one of my recent efforts, which motivated Tiago to invite me here, is I started thinking, okay, so what are other people doing in the world if we have only 100 languages? And even if the 100 languages are not, representative of all our culture and its bundle of words, what are people doing out there? So I found that there are people and groups out there in the world who are working on it. So for India, I believe, if you could say slide 17, the previous slide, the 17. Yeah, 14. I think we are at 14. So if you go to slide 17, that's called AI for Bharat. So there is a group in India called AI for Bharat.org is their site. They said, okay, we are going to take Indian languages, and they took, so I told you that 3,000 languages and 22 that are official languages. They said, we cannot do that much. So they took about 16 languages, which are common languages in there, and they started creating data sets. And there's a concept called transliteration, where it is not just the translation of the language, but how the language is sound, how does it sound, and to write that down. So they've created translations, transliterations, they've created models, they've created data sets, and they've created GitHub of all this. So if you say AI number 4 Bharat, and you just go there, and if you're interested in Indian languages and what's going on, you will find that. And I said, that's interesting. I don't know these people. By the way, I don't know the people behind it or have an affiliation. So if you're one of them, I would love to work with you. So talk to me. But I started digging into African languages, and I found most of the translation we get out there are not available in the 100 or 200 out there. So my recent project is called Global South in AI. Thank you for the next slide, Tiago. So Global South in AI, and again, it's globalsouthinai.org. It's a non-profit, not affiliated with Stanford or Business School of AI or Barcelona Technology School. And I'm so humbled to be working with amazing people from around the world who said, hey, we want to work with you. Languages from from Africa, from all the global South countries, which is Asia, from Brazil, from all Latin America. There are indigenous languages which are in Australia, in US, and so many other Mayan languages, and even Eastern European languages, which are not included in the core languages that AI understands today. That is Global South in AI. And so we said, okay, we want to make language AI inclusive. And we found that there is another group called there is a Latinx in AI. They're working on it. There's a Lanfrica, which is land language in Africa, who are working similar to AI for Bharat. And they're all doing their own thing. And they're amazing people doing amazing things. But each of them, they're not waiting for the world to come and make language model inclusive for them. So my calling was little like what Tiago is doing in big scale, to connect people across the continents and say, hey, can we learn from each other and say, what is the easiest way by which we can make this mainstream? And so that's how Global South in AI was created. And so with Global South in AI, what we did is we don't want to just have opinions and write articles and stuff. We wanted to make this solid research. So it has two callings. One, we want to make it inclusive. So we want to bring every possible language out of the 3,000 is or the 7,100 is our goal. And to create collaboration and to bring those people who are not in research. So you might be one of the 600 people watching, and you said, Dr. Tiago is on to his third PhD now. And so I cannot even think of one PhD in here. How am I going to publish research, right? And so if you're one of those people, I'm happy to help you, because I believe that I got into research much later once I got into academia. So I'm happy to guide people towards that. So what we did with Global South in AI is we ended up having a call for paper, and it is double-blind peer review, which means if you submit, you don't know who is reviewing it and who the reviewers are. They don't see the people's names and ideas. So we ended up, can we stay back in the previous slide? This is actually showing my Stanford class, so people can come to the Stanford class. The previous slide, I think, is 18. So where we had a call for paper, and we had 12, and we got a lot of submissions, thankfully, but we got 12 papers that were accepted by our area chairs. And it's diverse set of topics from various worlds. Would you mind going back to slide 18, which is just the previous slide? Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. And so we got submissions from Hindi, which is not just Hindi. Hindi is one of is our national language in India, but a version of Hindi called English, which combines Hindi and English, and 350 million people use that in chat to speak English but type it in English. And so that's one of the accepted papers. Sanskrit, Tamil, Spanish. There's lots that can be done in Spanish. There is a Bari language, which is from South Sudan. There's even one version of for sign language, one on Arabic. This is all the accepted papers that came out from our recent call for papers. So we're going to take these researchers, we did a session to help them build posters, and so we're going to take them to NeurIPS in December, which is happening in New Orleans. So that's the one tiny contribution to make language AI inclusive that I work towards, and I'm very very thankful to everybody who contributed to get the diversity for that. So with that, I want to pause. If you, Dr. Tiago, or anybody here who wants to ask me any questions or comments, I would be happy to oblige.
Thanks so much, Doctor. Thanks so much, Sudha. I'm so sorry. We have an habit here in Brazil. Don't take it seriously. We used to call all the scholars in general doctors, because the doctoral title, it's not something just for academic purpose, but it is a history of several areas, several researches areas, and this means a lot that we recognize the efforts of these researchers on the several areas. So don't take it seriously, don't take it in a bad sense.
To be honest about it.
It's something cultural for us here. And it's amazing, this exposition that you already shared with us, my dear friend, because I was discussing precisely this with Dr. Emmanuel Gufi and with another friend of mine, Dr. Eugenio. He works in the diplomatics here, connected here in Brazil. He's based on San Francisco just right now, and we are discussing precisely this point. The necessity of AI deals with different languages across the world to get in touch with the culture of this particular group of people, this particular society, this particular nation. And this is very, very much important, because we all know the English language is perhaps the most proficient across the world, but there is some idiosyncrasies that English language naturally cannot understand, cannot know and precisely reproduce on their own idiom. English does have their own idiosyncrasies, but it's different from Portuguese, from Indian, from Urdu, from all those different languages that you just mentioned, Sanskrit, some African, some. Here in Brazil we have lots of languages, different languages, precisely from the Indian people, indigenous peoples that we have here in Brazil. And some of these languages we have put so much effort to keep this culture alive, and this is very important for some cultural aspects. In short, Sudha, my question to you, just to briefly try to have some question from some answer for you, my dear friend, due to time, but I'd like to know, do you believe the AI must be filled with some different languages across the world to avoid perhaps bias on the construction of AI, or do you believe that, for instance, English language can supply all the necessities of programming or an algorithm of AI? What are your thoughts on this, my dear friend?
So I definitely don't think like English or any one language will be enough to represent the diverse set of people in the world. And one observation, so one of the things we are going to do at NeurIPS is, having worked with various different people who different groups, to even bring them to promote this Global South in AI call for paper and the exercise we went through, we're going to present our own learning as one of the posters. So one of my amazing learning from this is programming languages was created by technology companies, and it was in English. And I am old enough, dated, to know that I have worked with Fujitsu when they were trying to make a Japanese version, and I tried to learn Japanese to do that for programming languages. China is doing a lot in AI, and they're not waiting to do everything in English. When you try to teach the AI is going to learn based on data. So all the data is not in English. GPT-3, they fed the entire Wikipedia, and it doesn't know everything. So one of the papers that was accepted in this Global South in AI for Spanish was about understanding sarcasm in Spanish. And the AI doesn't know sarcasm today. We can say, hey, this Spanish is different from that Spanish, and you can teach it 4 different kinds of Spanish if you have enough data, but it doesn't understand that. The other thing is, there are languages in the world which don't have the data set which is sitting in a way that you can just feed it to train the AI. But people are living and talking and singing and loving and living their lives. And that is rich culture. So the beauty of this is people are not waiting for AI to come to them. They're not sitting and translating everything to text to be fed to the AI. People everywhere are creating their own, they're going on in their lives trying to solve problems. But from a person who's an inclusive AI researcher, I know that if we limit it only to English, the opportunity with, looking for jobs, looking to do interesting things that technology can do, they will miss out on that. So one example of one of the models that came from Africa was, they said they wanted to look at tweets of people and...
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're
We have a problem here with the internet here in my live stream.
So the question was, is it enough if AI knows English? Will it solve language AI problem for everybody? And my experience working with Global South in AI problem. So the short answer is, it won't be enough if AI knows English or any few handful of languages. That is one. And this is what I said when you asked me to repeat. I just want to add one more thing. When we were thinking about this word Global South in AI, we had this conversation, should we call this about Global South, because it brings back conversation about colonization, and you should be even mention it that way. And as I dug in, I found that we cannot run away from the history, however dark it is. Anybody who is listening to this, if you don't know coding, if you don't know to build language AI, doesn't matter. If you're a linguist, you're a writer, you're a journalist, you don't know technology, it doesn't matter. But you need to contribute to be part of this journey to make AI rich. Otherwise, it's going to become stagnant at some point. It's not going to ride on and colonize the world. It's going to not help everybody, and it's not going to scale. The beauty of technology is, if technology does not scale, it will not grow to the next level, and then that technology will fade and something else would come. So language AI has the opportunity to now, from going from, hey, I understand language with natural language processing, to I can generate language with this new foundation model. So there's a lot of discussions and debates on this foundation models, whether that is it, or is it come to a crossroad and we need something else as the next wave. And that cannot happen unless we have people who understand language, who understand all kinds of diverse language, and who can be part of this. And today, tech companies, when they're building language AI, there are 100 technologists, and they would hire one linguist in there. Every language, they have one linguist. And then if you see the 100 language that Google said, hey, we will add these languages, it has some obscure languages which you don't know about. Why? Because those people who speak that language are in there, and they are part of that team, and they said, hey, what about my language? And so that got added. So the only way to do that is to add diversity into developing language. And if you are not working in technology industry, if you're not there involved in any of these companies, the easiest thing is publish research. So one area where we can decolonize data for different regions, we can decolonize data for gender bias. There's a lot more work you can do just with data. And one of the things I'm calling people now, whoever is listening, because one of my observation is there are sounds in my language called Tamil. And as I was talking to people, I heard there are similar sounds like that in some African languages. And I was like, my God, I thought this was unique to my language and English doesn't have it. And so there could be commonality like that we could collaborate on. That is one, I'm hoping that I would be able to publish research with languages that I don't know, but you know, and maybe we can work together. The other thing is, a lot of patriarchy is baked in languages. Unfortunately, I don't know a single language which does not have patriarchy baked in it. So anybody who's interested in it, there's a lot of research already done on some of this, on removing gender bias from language. But if you want to collaborate, I would love to talk to you, and maybe we can publish some research across 3,000 languages. Yes, I see with Divya's hand go up. I was talking to this researcher, Yaine Inki, who speaks Bari from South Sudan. And she and I shared like, oh my God, there are sounds in our language, which is the meaning of women. And, we need to work on it. So I'm hoping to do some research on that. Maybe, some of you can collaborate with that. And again, the promise of, if you're new to research, I'm happy to share my webinar on Research 101 and do some other work like this with Dr. Tiago also to help you come into the fold. Or if you just want to work on any of the topics that I was talking about, I'm happy to collaborate. I think I've gone past my time, so I'm going to wrap up.
Thanks so much, my friend. Thanks so much. I will share the floor with you, my friend Faiz, Professor Faiz. Let me share some thoughts on here on YouTube. Rafael, how are you, my friend? Good morning. Mariana Leontina just shared that there is a huge difficulty on the translators to catch the spirit of the meaning, the soul of the text. This is very, very much a thing. The online translators, perhaps with the most advanced resources, cannot properly catch the whole idea and the whole idiosyncrasies of the idiom. We advance so much on this field, but unfortunately, there is so much more still to advance. And I believe the use of artificial intelligence at some point will perhaps help on this. My friend Professor Faiz, the floor is yours. Thanks so much. You have something to add?
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to, Sudha ma'am, she pointed out a very important thing with respect to the understanding of the languages and through the language, the cultures and the people, thereby through using artificial intelligence. So this is something which is very, very important, simply because of the fact that this actually recalls me of an anthropologist, Rabino, if I'm not wrong. So in one of his works, in one of his books, he has mentioned that the need for friendship may arise all of a sudden, but friendship itself does not build up all of a sudden, right? So I'm kind of paraphrasing it. So this is where understanding people, understanding cultures is very, very important, because it is time consuming in itself, right? It's not like through a click of a finger you'll be able to understand languages and cultures. It's a process in itself. You need to do it organically. So you should start off right away, instead of waiting for some standardization, which was perhaps the theme of the talk as far as Sudha ma'am is concerned. So those were just my small inputs with respect to that.
Important thoughts, my dear friend. Thanks so much for sharing they with us. And I'd like to once again say thank you to my dear friend Professor Sudha and all the background that she here shared with us. Thanks so much for being here, and I wish you the best luck on this research account with us and everything that we can add at some point to it. It's an amazing topic that perhaps we can help at some point. Thanks so much, my dear friend. So moving forward, I'd like to invite, just let me check the next guest. We have here our dearest friend, Dr. Dwivedi. She is an amazing person, and she is that's the third time that I'm here with her, sharing her thoughts, her ideas, and all her knowledge through Diva. Diva, happy to connect you. Thanks so much. I'm so very happy to have around once again Dr. Diva here, and I'm so very happy that Diva allowed me to know the Professor Sudha and all this project that she just mentioned. My friend Diva, this is the third time it's just mentioned. We have this year a fantastic conference involved in the necessity to observe and preserve the gender equality, nod to equality. We have you also last year on Brazil's AI bill. So we once again met here. We can meet here in this meeting, and I cannot say how thankful I am with you, your presence. Thanks so much. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. And I really hope I'm audible properly. First, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting Sudha ma'am. And I'm really happy that she actually set the floor for me and she has spoken everything. I really am thinking where to add what. So I have forgotten everything what I had planned. But before I start what I wanted to talk about, I would like to add what she was saying about AI for Bharat. That is an initiative by IIT Madras. It's a pioneer institute in India. It's one of the topmost. And they started it with the help of Nandan Lilekari. So his contribution was there. And their basic focus is not only languages, it is even sign languages and everything, as Sudha ma'am said. The beauty of this particular project is it is trying to accommodate all the 22 languages which we officially recognize, though we have more than 3,000 languages, dialects, and everything is there. But that's what they are trying to do. And somehow, since I also have IIT Connect, so I get to know more about it through alumni networks as well. And the best part right now is they are also trying to do something for law and legal language. So that's something very fun for me, though it's not AI for Bharat initiative, but it is by IIT Madras. So they are doing it with MIT. That being said, I would like to add a lot of topics which she already has talked about, like culture generated by language and language generated by culture as well. All of this definitely has gender bias, but the bias which is biggest and which we face is the regional bias when you are talking in the similar language. That also is something very predominant. If two people meet, they have a certain language, connect and love, they just connect and they forget that someone else is sitting there. So that's something which you cannot teach AI no matter what you do. It will learn that bias and it will always be there. It cannot be removed. So that being said, I love to talk about history, culture, because without history we are nothing. And history is something which has given us everything right now even to talk about. But what I wanted to talk about is how that history is affecting our brain and how that history is affecting our rights, and then connect both of them and tell you about brain rights, which is the newfound talk. And I have recently done a lot of research around it and wrote a paper with one of the dear friends, Professor Marques, about how human AI and social network works and why there is a big role to play around brain ethics and neuroethics and neuro AI. Now, the issue with culture or issue with the whole social network is we try and think of social network as either online or offline. But there is a family social network, there is a personal social network, then there is a school social network. There are different kind of networks, and we have to understand all this has to be fed in software or in AI for it to understand what we are going through as humans. Now that becomes very questionable, because obviously language will become one of the barriers, the way of expression will become one of the barriers, the demography will become one of the barriers. But that's not what I am talking about. I want to talk about giving constitutional rights to your brain, as in what you are thinking, how to safeguard your right, how to safeguard that particular aspect where there is some mens rea or mental aspect attached to any kind of work being done. That can be criminal and that can be civil, it doesn't matter. But the moment that privacy is infringed, that is where brain rights arise. And we are in a very fortunate time where Chile recently amended their constitution just to give the neuro rights to their citizens, where you cannot have that data extracted from your brain. You cannot talk about that unless there is a consent given by even the prisoners. It's not like it's open for everyone. That is what they are talking about. It's constitutional rights. Even India is talking about it. Most of the countries are. If Brazil also is talking about it, but we have not yet implemented it. There is probably there will be a possibility that we'll get to see it very soon. So what I wanted to add here was it started in 2019 predominantly. It was by neuroscientist Rafael Yuste. I think I am correctly taking his name. He was the director at that time of Center for Neurotechnology at Columbia University. So his main driving force was talking about how that particular biotechnology or brain technology is affecting our emotions, is controlling our emotions, and it's trying to show us a path which we may or may not have taken if that stimulation was not going through our brains. So is it that companies are using it in that sense? Why I'm speaking like this is because I do understand technology, I do understand law as well. Has law allowed us to talk about it? Has law given us the right to even enter a prisoner's mind and think whether he or she was thinking at that particular point of time or not? That becomes the questionable thing. So when I was writing this particular paper, our basic focus was on 5 formats of any neuro rights, which is first is free will, then personal identity, then mental health, then equal access, and then protection against exclusion. So if you have all that data to yourself, how you are going to use all this against a person's neuro right is something which I wanted to talk about. Now, when Sudha ma'am was talking about all her setting her platform, she was talking about language. Now I'll try and connect language, culture, history to the kind of neuro rights which we generate, even sitting in a country where right now we do not have a constitutional right for that particular neuroethics. But since Indian government and even Brazilian government is working a lot aligned relating to the kind of talks which are going for data privacy, for AI development, for any kind of technological development, I personally think that we will soon be seeing such kind of concepts in our own bills, in our own acts. Why it has become eminent, why it has become so important even for the governments to talk about and implement as a law is because of our growing cyber life. The social network which we have generated around it, like we personally have not met, but we have a social network right now through which we are connected over here. It's not only that I know Diego or I know Sudha directly, but we do know each other indirectly, and we do know personally as well, but we have not physically met. So that is something which is giving governments idea about giving rise to these kind of fundamental rights as well. If we talk about that, will it be giving rise to another kind of bias? Nobody knows right now. It will come with the kind of advent of that particular kind of technology or right. So when we are talking about gender bias, when we are talking about all these legal rights or fundamental rights, are these rights only to show in the constitution or the paper? No, but for me they are there. But the problem with the, I would say, society is most of the times we are not even aware of our own fundamental rights. If I meet 100 people live and physically, if I ask them, hardly 10 will say that I know my fundamental rights. Any country in the world will be the same. It's not like they know all their rights. They know their personal 1 or 2 rights and they'll start shouting. No. My purpose always has been to talk about society at large. And if you want to make it bigger, better, want people to reach out to you and give more data to you, we have to establish a format of trust. We have to have trustworthiness. That's why in OECD AI principles, which most of us have read, similarly with G20, similarly with universal guidelines, all of them talks about trustworthiness, they talk about fairness, they talk about robustness, they talk about security as well. Why all these things are coming into mind when we are, the moment we start talking about ethics? I always talk about morality first and then ethics later, because if you are moral enough, you will become ethical, no doubt. Because if you are moral, you will start following law, you will start following all the mandates, rules and regulations, and you will end up being ethical no matter what. Now, are we moral enough? Like a couple of times I have stated this very frankly, maybe people will find it offensive, but I feel that humans are not moral enough, ethical enough. Even I am not. I'm saying this on international level. I'm not 100% ethical. I may have done something which I felt that it was ethical, but it may not have been. So given that fact, are we really thinking about making AI so much ethical or so much moral in terms that we even have not achieved? Is that even possible? Why I'm pointing these things out? Because this is the platform where a person can extract whatever kind of talk they want. They can understand it as a pro-ethical talk, or they can understand it as anti-ethical talk. But my only concern is, are humans enough ethical to make AI ethical? Are we non-biased that we are talking about making AI non-biased? Is it even possible? It is not, because we are not at all non-biased people. We are absolutely biased. We are totally judgmental, because human race is that ways. We are absolutely competitive. The moment competition comes into picture, ethics takes a side lane. So now again, I'll come back to the language. Like Sudha pointed out that there are language sounds as well, which cannot be explained in any other language. So my mother tongue is Hindi. I know Hindi, but there is a language called Bhojpuri, which is my mother's mother tongue. Bhojpuri has certain language sounds or words which cannot be explained in any other language, in any other manner, unless we do that particular action and show you that this is what we are trying to explain. Still, you will not have the word. Similarly, it may be in the Spanish as well. So when we are talking about technology development in terms of developing countries, as we understand for India, as it's the same for Brazil, we are developing, we are trying to go into the same race as developed countries have already reached and shown us the path. Now, are we really equipped enough to make AI understand all the diversity in the similar manner? I really don't think that that competition is required. Like she pointed out that apart from the fact that there are 100 languages being picked, there are certain groups who have picked up their local languages and working on it without any thought of the fact that nobody else is going to help them. Doesn't matter, they are at least doing it for their own society. So since I have always been a social entrepreneur, I have always tried to work around society and try and understand what exactly is the need of the hour. Right now, the need of the hour for AI is to make sure that education is on the best level possible, because that is something which was heavily affected by COVID. Though we have moved to online format, but online has proven to be a little bit distractive for students, at least the younger students who have a capacity of not understanding more than 100 words within a minute or so. So how do you make AI understand so much when you are unable to make your human child understand that in the similar platform? I believe AI as a baby whom we are nurturing with food thought, not only I would say not only the programming which we do, the data which we feed. No, we are nurturing it with a lot of thought. But that thought, where is it going? What kind of output are we going to get? My question is always there. Are we legally absolutely certain that we will be able to cater to that particular issue? I really don't think that we
Which we
are right
do,
now
the data which we
any
feed.
country
No,
for that
we are
matter.
not.
Though recently New York came up with their own privacy AI bias audit law. Then EU has come up with a lot of work for gender equality. EU is even talking about a lot around AI and its ethical aspects and implementing ethics in the companies. Is implementing a person with good enough? I think no. It's about the society which you are dealing with. Is it the elite? Is in the nascent phase of the society? Are we dying? Are we developed? Because all of us have different needs. All of us have different requirements. Recently, when I was doing some patent work, what I realized was at a place where I am doing something villages or universities or students who don't even know what patent is and why do they need to do patent. Where is the parity? Are we trying to remove the difference, or are we trying to create even more difference? Because there is no parity in between these two societies which I live in. Currently, I am right now in my birthplace. It's called Varanasi, one of the oldest cultural places. Oldest place I am saying because it is said to be one of the oldest cities in the world. It is spiritual city. So whenever I talk about spiritual AI, it becomes, for people, it becomes eminent that you are from Banaras, that's why you're talking about it. No, I talk about it because spirituality is something which will give rise to peace, not religion. So please understand the difference between spirituality and religious aspects. So that being said, I have seen a scant difference between the students whom I teach outside India, whom I teach in Delhi or Mumbai, or whom I teach in Banaras. Even the most learned ones, they hardly know as in what technologies are we working upon. Why is that difference? Even in the institutions also, there are certain people who know more, who know less. Now, how are we going to bring in that parity in between them? Is it only with the help of language? Is it only with the help of providing them with data? No, it is by providing them the best technology possible so that they can learn about the technology and they can work on it. Like when Thiago talks about his institution or Brazil for that matter, they have their technological advancements because he's sitting in one of the best cities possible in Brazil. And he knows that. I live in Delhi, that is national capital. I have all the facilities there. Supreme Court has everything for that matter to read around the world, and I do that. I was in one of the most pioneer institutions, I got that. But what about the people who do not have that access? How to reach them? Shouldn't we start thinking about making AI that reachable for people so that at least we know their problems? I do understand it has its own positives and negatives, but can we try and do something to connect more people with not only AI but with technology? Phones have reached everywhere, accepted. But has the phone made any difference? I really don't think so, because phone, what they have done is they have created a digital platform where out of 8 billion, there are almost 5 billion available on digital space. And they are, most of them are using it for entertainment purposes rather than only reaching out and trying to find good ways to enhance their living standard, enhance their educational standard, enhance everything around them. So what I basically do is I do talk a lot around social development. I do talk more about awareness, education, rather than only implementing technology. I am not against technology. I love talking about it as well. But shouldn't we try and reach more people? Like if we are talking about languages, we have to be around those people to understand why that language is so important for AI to understand. In Banaras only, Sanskrit coding had started. It was started by a professor to make a computer at that time. And it was almost as if he was trying to make a supercomputer, though it was not a success. But then that concept was there way back in 80s. Germany is working on Sanskrit. Japan is working on Sanskrit. Sanskrit is something which is considered to be one of the oldest, obviously after Tamil. Tamil is one of the oldest languages. These two languages, they have given rise to so many other languages. So why can't we try and reach out to those people who are masters of that and then connect them to AI? And why are they adamant on not connecting with us? Probably the reason is we believe that we know technology and they don't know technology, so we don't even try and reach out. I tried to reach out, though they turned me down. They said, no, we don't need to learn that language. We are surviving. We are okay with it. So that being said, I'll come back to my favorite topic, that is gender. How is AI going to help gender? Recently, EU gave a report where it was said that because of AI, there will be lesser gender bias and hiring of women. How will that happen, even if that is a question? If women are not even applying for the position, how will you hire?
And Wi-Fi 5G and the 5G of my phone also. But this last part of the Diva, this last few moments, as much as it happens.
Don't worry, I'll repeat it.
Please do it, my friend, to conclude your exposition. Do it. We have still a bit of time. I'd like also to improve, to say that Professor Raeesa, Dr. Raeesa is here with us. Thanks so much for joining the meeting. Sudha, you want to add something? You're mute.
So I have a request of Divya, since she's happy to repeat. When she got started and about the whole concept of brain rights, you listed 5 things. I was trying to live stream, live tweet that, and I captured only 3 of them. So you said like free will, personal identity, protection against exclusion. Can you repeat?
Mental health and equal access.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Fantastic.
So those 5 rights are always talked about.
The floor is yours. Thanks so much once again.
Thank you. My part is. I'm sorry.
We have all this kind of problem here with languages today. Our Google translator stopped working. We are just having subtitles in English. We have something bad with my internet connection, but we will move forward because we are hungry to have knowledge. And please, the floor is yours. And once again, thanks. So sorry, my friend.
So the 5 things which I talked about is a part of my and Marques's paper, which we recently submitted for the book. It is about neuro rights that has been given 5 formats. So that's what I was. But last part was not about it. Last part was about hiring women if they are not applying. I don't know how that will happen. That is something which is very superficial. And most of the times when I am listening to people talking about gender rights, there is always a confusion and there is always a question. So that's why I just made my presentation around it. I did not make any presentation like Sudha ma'am, and she is a true academician. I am an advocate and I work like one. Though sometimes my technology brain also triggers and I start talking about tech. So that is the reason. By the way, I do practice privacy, so I talk about privacy. And now I'll rather refrain from talking a lot about it. But recently there is an artist who has been given US copyright registration for AI art being developed. That's something new. So we should ponder upon all these kind of questions as well, that AI is now developing copyrightable material, AI is developing patentable material. So are we going to lose the job? I don't know. We'll not. Because we are humans, we'll survive. So that being said, I'll now stop myself from talking a lot. That was the last part of mine. Thank you so much. Thank you, Thiago, again for inviting me.
Thanks so much, my dear friend Diva. I'm so sorry for everyone for this internet instability that I am suffering here. I don't have an idea. Perhaps I forgot to pay the bill, but I guess that's not something that I can apologize enough. Sudha, I'm so sorry. Diva, let me ask you something. Sudha was mentioned about this language and the importance of connected with their own language, and I'd like to hear from you. Sudha also mentioned DALI and another and different kinds of Sudha, I'm aware. Unfortunately, this last part of Diva was kind of issued due to this internet connection problems that I just mentioned. I'm so sorry for this. Let me recap a little bit on this thought. DALI, Sudha expressed, present to us something new at some point, some different ways of expressing that we perhaps only could see through a human being. Diva, do you believe that, for instance, DALI programming can improve or can be a path to be followed for all the AIs learning languages, for instance, to improve the idiosyncrasies, to improve the comprehension of those languages that you and Sudha just mentioned. What are your thoughts on this, my dear friend Diva?
Correct me if I'm wrong. You are asking about the difference that languages will make if we do it around AI and program it. That's what you have asked, right?
Yeah, indeed. There is a connection between this languages, the programming languages, and the spoken languages. Just you mentioned Hindi and all those languages across the history of India. Do you believe that this new kind of programming languages can improve the comprehension of the spoken language? Or do you have any study on these? What are your thoughts? Because we are seeing the improvement of the programming language through tools as I mentioned, as DALL-E, which are evoking more imaginative, more soul to the programming per se. What are your thoughts on this, my friend?
Okay, that being said, I will start with the fact that we need to have one common language so that we can speak similarly and understand each other. That is first priority of the world. Other than that, that being said, obviously it will enhance the quality of communication, it will enhance the quality of programming itself. Though DALL-E is giving rise to almost similar platform for many languages, but my point always lies in the fact that whether it is picking up the language in the right dialect or not, because even in the languages there are different dialects even for the same language. Say if I'm crossing 10 kilometers in India, there is a certain area where I live. Every 10 kilometers there is a new dialect of the same language. So whether it is picking up in the right dimension or not, that is first thing. Second, if you talk about programming the languages in AI or any software for that matter, the problem lies is they are going to be programming it in computer language only. They cannot start programming it in different languages of the world, like 7,000 of them. No, but they can try and maybe run a kind of program which will give rise to similar kind of statements if being picked up in different dialects. But that is not going to be anytime sooner, at least as per my brain works, because it's not that easy. Even we cannot understand the similar Hindi which is being spoken in different areas in India. Everyone has a different connect to a different word, but how is computer going to do it? Probably it will, probably it will not. I really am not that positive right now. I'm not certain that it is going to happen anytime sooner, but yes, definitely if that happens, our culture will take a leap forward. Why it will happen? Because it will become easier for us to understand other cultures, and why they do what they do is what is most important. Why there is a conflict in the world. We always have an international law aspects, right? So when lawyers talk, they start with international law. Why we have international law? Why do we have soft laws in them? Reason is we want to have a common platform where we can talk, we can have that dialogue and reach a certain answer which will not affect our societies at large. Say two states, two jurisdictions are talking about any trade, any commerce, any other matter. So the moment that happens, what will take place is we will have a level ground. We'll have an understanding about why culture is like this in Brazil, why this culture is in North India, why this culture is in South India, and what is the connect. Why South Africa is a different culture, why similarly placed African nations have different cultures in their own tribes. So we basically have to understand that, and probably if that happens, then AI will be that developed and it will take care of human brain, and then obviously we will be playing around brain rights then, but they are very important. So that being said, I hope I tried to answer this question and it was okay enough, but obviously not absolute. So that's my thought.
Fantastic, Diva, as always. Thanks so much for sharing. And I do believe that we can improve the comprehension and development of AI with everyone's participation, as you just mentioned. So the Brazilian people must to understand the programming and trying to develop this programming and trying to connect the Brazilian language, Portuguese, to AI, to improve AI, so as must be done in India, so as must be done in France, so as must be done in Africa, so as must be done across the world. It's the only way to improve AI, to improve AI response. It is to establishing a huge amount of data on the topic, and the data must be provided by the locals. It's not rocket science, it's something that we must improve, because we understand our own language, and we understanding it, we can perhaps in a bit more easier way trying to perhaps improve the response, the output of the AI tool that we are trying to reach out. That's something. Thanks so much, my friend. Thanks so much. Without further ado, I'd like to invite for the floor my dear friend, Professor Faiz Ayat Ansari. Thanks so much, Professor Faiz, for being here with us. I'm very excited to hear you talk about some of Indian cultural and constitutional history, because everything begins with this conference. This idea of this conference begins with this Professor Isabelle from Mato Grosso Federal University here in Brazil, and invite me to share some thoughts here in Brazil about this, about constitutionalism here in Brazil and India. And everything begins with my dear friend Professor Faiz, who invited me to present something for their university in India. And I am still very proud of this invitation, and I'm very honored for our friendship, my dear friend Professor Faiz. Thanks so much for being here in this morning with us. And as I mentioned, I'd like very much to hear your thoughts on the constitutionalism for you, by you, that you are a fantastic researcher on the constitutional field as myself. Thanks so much, my friend. The floor is yours.
So thanks a lot, Professor Thiago, first of all, for pulling this wonderful interaction off and having everyone on board and inviting me as well. And so I'm basically Faiz Ansari, a research scholar pursuing my PhD at National Law School of India, University, Bangalore, and an assistant professor and coordinator for Center for Constitutional Law and Policy at Parul University. And I also research with the Mediterranean International Center for Human Rights Research, which Professor Thiago is very familiar with as well. Talking about the topic which I'll be discussing, constitutionalism in India. Before talking about the in India part, we need to understand the importance of something like a constitution. When Divya ma'am, she in the beginning of her talk, she had mentioned something about history, whereby history is very important and you need to go back to the roots in order to understand it thoroughly. It's very in synchronization with law as well. It actually reminds me, which I had discussed this earlier with Professor Thiago as well. When Glanville Austin, he has written a very wonderful book by the name of Making of the Indian Constitution. And in the beginning, perhaps in the first few chapters of that book, he mentions that law makes history and history makes law. So, and constitution is the supreme law of the land by and large, it's the grand norm. So, when we talk about the constitution of any country, at whatever point of history that is, it is a landmark time for that particular country, whether it is a continuation of the past of that particular state, or it is a break from the past, whatever it is, but something new is getting determined, maybe by everyone through a referendum, maybe by some constituent assembly members, as is the case with India, or whatever it is. But a specific roadmap is being set away as far as making of the constitution is concerned. So constitution, we all by and large know that it basically means the supreme law of the land. It is the basic law from which rest of the laws of the particular country will get their inspiration from, and in order to further develop the objectives of the constitution, other laws will be in place. So that is what we understand by constitution. Now, what do we mean by the next thing, that is constitutionalism? uh, so it basically means that there has to be, what does a constitution essentially do? It If you talk about the people, the individuals, or the groups of people, it certifies that there are certain minimum rights, you may call it whatever you want to, in the form of natural rights or fundamental rights or human rights. They will be entitled to certain sets of rights, and the state will not be allowed to encroach upon those fundamental rights beyond a particular extent. And it also defines a whole lot of other things as well, whereby there are a number of stakeholders in any state. Okay, there are the individuals, there are groups, there are constitutional bodies, there are statutory bodies, there are constitutionally recognized posts, like you have the president and the prime minister, and so on and so forth. So everyone should remain within their limits. There is a set limit defined beyond which you cannot go. That is the true essence or spirit of constitutionalism. So it basically means that the individuals have got certain sets of rights, but those rights need to be exercised till a certain limit. Similarly, the state has got a lot of power. The state has got the power to make the laws, but it cannot make any such law which transgresses upon any fundamental rights of the citizens. So that is a limit to that. So each and every stakeholder in the entire constitutional process, so to speak, in the entire democratic process, in the maintenance of the principles of transparency and accountability, everyone has got certain limits, which we in Hindustani language by and large call something called Lakshman Rekha. So we have to adhere by that. So that is the sense of what we mean by constitutionalism. Now, what what I'll try to discuss is that, are there certain features which are required to ensure that there is constitutionalism? Because many a times people at large, they are not able to differentiate between constitution and constitutionalism. They use these two terms interchangeably, synonymously, but we need to understand the difference between them. Having a constitution is not a guarantee to having constitutionalism. The best example which you can quote for this is Germany during the time of Adolf Hitler. They also had a constitution in force, right? But did they have the spirit of constitutionalism? Were there proper limits in place within which the state could act and within which the citizens could enjoy their rights? Maybe the answer is not in the affirmative to this question, right? So this is where it is very important that as citizens, as responsible citizens, not only of your particular state, but as such of the entire world, you should not feel happy and content simply because of the fact that there is something like a constitution, or there is something called a written document, a grand norm, which you talk about in legal theory and jurisprudence, which is there, something is there. But on the top of it, that particular document should be reflective of the larger democratic, social, fraternity values which are imbibed and which are actually followed or not. So there are a few features. This is not an exhaustive list, and I won't be going too much into the details of all these features because of lack of time. So the first thing is due process. What do you mean by due process of law? It means that the law should be followed not only in terms of its literal sense, but actually in terms of its spirit, right? And this is where there was a lot of debate in certain Indian landmark constitutional law cases, whereby there was a question of interpretation of what do you mean by procedure established by law and due process of law. Procedure established by law is a little bit of a narrower framework, right? That if there is any procedure, whatever that procedure may be, but if it is established, if it is documented, if it is codified, then it is fair enough. Okay, there is a procedure and that checkbox is ticked. But when we talk about due process of law, it is something more than that. It talks about the fairness of it. It talks about the reasonableness of it. Just because of the fact that it is existent is not enough. It's something more is required. And this is what is again the difference between constitution and constitutionalism. Constitutionalism requires a due process of law. Whoever that authority may be, whoever the sovereign may be, whether it's a monarch or whether it's a direct democracy, indirect democracy, whatever form of government it is, due process of law is perhaps an important feature to have constitutionalism in force. Another important feature is separation of powers. So to all the political science enthusiasts, this would be a very familiar term, separation of powers. It basically means that we divide the various organs of the state. So there is a legislature, there is an executive, and there's the judiciary, whose by and large functions are to make the laws or to draft the laws as far as the legislature is concerned, to execute or to administer the laws as far as the executive is concerned, and to interpret the laws as far as the judiciary is concerned. Why is this important? Why is this separation of powers important? Of course, strict separation of powers or literal separation of powers is perhaps a little impractical, but there should be minimum broad separation of powers, which means that a single person or a single authority should not simultaneously be a part of the legislature as well, the executive as well, or the judiciary as well. This is very important and very logical as well, right? Like imagine if I'm a legislator, I'm making a law, okay, I'm drafting a law, and whether that law is constitutional or otherwise, whether that law is in the spirit of constitutionalism or not, that should be decided by someone else, right? It should not be given to me to decide whether that law which I drafted is constitutional or not. So that broad separation of powers is very important to have a sense of constitutionalism in place. Another very important thing is the role of the state. So, since I mentioned a little bit about political science, we very well know about the concept of state, right? There is this social contract theory, whereby earlier there was no state at all, there were just individuals living, and uh, you know, and the social contract theory by Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. When they talk about it, they say that man was really short-tempered and very brutal, and they used to attack each other without any reason. Basically, not really civilized society. So the human beings at that point of time thought that there should be a certain entity which should protect us from infringement or violation of our rights, which will take care of us, which will provide security to us, and thereby the birth of the state happened. Okay, the state came into existence, and there was a contract between the state and the individuals. And when we talk about a contract, we by and large know legal principles. In any contract, there is an offer and an acceptance. Okay, so in general parlance, we call it a give and take, right? So what was the give and take between the state and the individuals? The individuals, they gave the right to the state to govern them, to make laws for them, right? And what was the take here? What did they take back in return? They took back in return their security, their protection, that the state will protect them. So this was the original idea of the state. But sometimes in modern day and age, we find that the state transgresses upon these fundamental ideas. The state actually tries to interfere into your lives by directly or indirectly suppressing or violating or diluting or eroding, you can take whatever word you like, your fundamental rights. So this should not be the case. There has to be a limit to which the state should be restricted to. It applies to the individuals as well, but when we compare the state to an individual, the state is very mighty, okay, as compared to an individual who can be belittled by the state. And that is why we need to have more checks and balances against an entity which is very, very strong. Okay, so that is where again it is very important to have constitutionalism in force to check the checks and balances principle, to check on the powers being exercised by the mighty authority. And how do we do this? One of the mechanisms to do this is through judicial review, is to have an independent judiciary. Judiciary as such, through by extension, it is an offshoot of the state itself, it is an organ of the state itself, but it is an independent, or it should be an independent organ of the state, which means that if anything is carried out by other organs of the state, maybe the legislature or the executive, which is not in consonance with the spirit of the constitution, which is not according to constitutionalism, then that particular organ, that is the judiciary, should be fair and independent and having the powers to limit, to put a full stop on such exaggeration of powers by certain other organs. This is extremely important, not only to protect the rights of a few people, but also for the larger narrative as far as public perception is concerned. Because a very important principle of law, pretty much everywhere across the world, is that justice should not only be done, but it should also be seen to be done. Okay, so the perception is very, very important, and this perception can only be built when there is an independent judiciary who will check into the constitutionalism, who has the power without any, without any fear of having any backtrash or something like that, and it will take care of the rights of the people. So this is broadly which I wanted to state. When I was listening to Divya ma'am, she had also mentioned an important point as far as people being aware of their rights or not is concerned, right? Like she took the example that if you ask 100 people, maybe 10 people or so would be knowing broadly what are their rights, and rest of the people may not be knowing. In addition to this point, it is very, very important that when we talk about fundamental rights or when we talk about constitutional rights, we tend to limit it in the public sphere. So once we go outside the comfort of our home, once we transgress that limit, once we are in the public, then we kind of talk or discuss or appreciate or respect our and someone else's fundamental rights. However, if we truly want to inculcate the spirit of constitutionalism, we should inculcate these rights, this constitutional framework, within our homes itself. So it's kind of easy to to talk about rights and public rights when you are outside, when you are portraying yourself to someone else. But when someone else may have a say on what you are doing. But this should not be forgotten when we are at our own homes. So democratic way of functioning, the various constitutional rights, this should be practiced at home, or practice is the last thing. Like the first of all, it should be discussed, it should be appreciated, it should be respected, and finally practiced in the four walls of the home itself. And once that is done, you can truly say that the ideals of constitutionalism, or whatever that country or that state or the framers of the constitution envisaged at that point of time, it has truly been achieved. So just with those words, I would just conclude. I hope I did not take a lot of extra time, so I would like to just conclude. Any comments or queries or any discussions are most welcome.
Thanks so much, my friend. And you share with us some amazing topics, amazing topics that we should all always keep in mind. And this spirit that Diva Sudha already have shared with us, I like to ask you briefly, my friend, because I don't want to extend too much of our meeting. I know you are all have your personal schedule. I know it's Saturday. I know it's a different time zone. So I'm once again very happy and thankful for you having been here with us all this morning here in Brazil. But let me ask you, Faiz, I cannot let you go without asking you about this. We have shared this morning, through all this morning, some thoughts on the importance of knowing the spirit of the language, of the culture of the nation. And you just shared the importance of always understanding, trying to understand the spirit of the law for the purpose of the interpretation of the law. I guess you are absolutely correct. You already know some of my thoughts on this topic, my friend Faiz, because I've shared them with you concerning the current analytical law school that we are having based here in Brazil, and perhaps at some point the same analytical law school is happening in India in the constitutional level, on the constitutional court level. My question for you, Faiz, is the values are very important for the interpretation of the law, of the constitution, of the fundamental rights. But the values, as Sudha and Divya just mentioned, are personal, are morality, as you just mentioned, also are a morality of our very souls are connected with ethics also. So my question is not too much power for the judiciary branch to be granted this interpretation according to the personal values of these judges? I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, my friend? Please, can you enlighten us? How it's it going in India? I'm curious also.
So that's a very fascinating question, Professor Thiago. So I mentioned about this principle of checks and balances. So when I talk about, so there are three organs of the state, right? So when you talk about the judiciary, it should play a checks and balances role to the other two organs of the state, that is the legislature and the executive. Similarly, the legislature has got a power of keeping these checks and balances as far as the judiciary and the executive is concerned. So if you remember, just around 2 or 3 years down the line, talking about a recent example, okay, so just 2 or 3 years down the line, and there was a judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court of India, uh, which kind of made it a little easier to get the bail for a person who is accused of committing any crime on any other person based on the caste of that person, caste or creed of that person. Okay, so there's a law in force in India, the SC/ST Atrocities Act, which talks about the fact that, if you carry out a crime against me, and the reason because the crime is getting committed is because you do not like my caste, maybe, or my creed, something like that. Okay, so there's not only a one-to-one individual issue, but it is a little more than that. So there's a law in place in India, and under that particular law, as far as bail and anticipatory bail is concerned, it is a little difficult to get. So, by virtue of one of the decisions of the Supreme Court of India, it seemed that the Supreme Court went a little easy on that. And remember, India being a common law country, we follow precedents, right? So whatever the law is laid down by the Supreme Court, it's binding on all the other courts of India. So it seemed like it may be a little easier for someone to get the bail if someone commits a crime of this nature. And the legislature, within a few weeks or months, they came up with a clarification that, this the law and laid down by the Supreme Court is not really a good law. They reinforced the SC/ST Act in the discussion in the Parliament, and because of that, the judiciary had to go back to its original decision. And later on, they laid down that there is no diluting the objects and the reasons of this act or the aims of this law. So it's just an example that all the important stakeholders, all the organs of the state, they need to work around these checks and balances. Judiciary is a prime example of that, because most of the times across the world we see the examples that the violation of constitutional spirit or constitutionalism is carried out by some other organs as well. So but judiciary is not immune to that. It is again a group of people. So again, so therefore it's a checks and balances from every angle, every possible organ of the state.
Fantastic, my friend. Just to clarify, everyone who's currently watching and are not familiar with Indian Constitution, the caste system was abolished since Indian Constitution, and to this, I believe that any kind of law, any kind of discriminatory action based on a caste would be illegal, would be a void for at least a void, and that's precisely I believe that Professor Faiz just shared with us just right now. And for me, my friend, and I will just call for the floor Professor Dr. Raeesa to call in a second. But for me, one of the most fascinating aspects of Indian legal system was to understand a little bit better that perhaps the Dharma is something that are values that the legislator and the judiciary branch use as a value to perform a judge, to apply the law, as you just mentioned, and to apply the law, bringing the law to the concrete case, to the proper case, to the specific case, as you just mentioned. The law is abstract and the case is concrete. So using these values, and this is very important, use your own culture, your own values. The law must be applied to every particular case. Thanks so much, my dear friend, Professor Faiz, for this enlightening and sharing of thoughts, this enlightening keynotes. And I'd like to just right now to invite our morning's last guest. She's a friend of mine also, though presented by another friend, Professor Paiman, currently Dean of University in Iraq. I'd like to invite Dr. Raeesabegam Usmani. She also will share some thoughts on linguistics aspects and cultural aspects of India. Thanks so much for having accepted us our invitation, Professor Raeesa, and I'm so very happy that you could be here presenting your research, presenting your work, and I'm so very happy that Paiman could introduce you and me. Thanks so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. A very good evening to those who are in India, and perhaps good morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Thiago, thank you very much for the invitation, and apologies for the delay since it's thank you for accommodating my last minute request. I thought I'll be talking about language and its aspect, considering some technical size points. However, I think it is better considering the mixed audience who are not much familiar about the core crux areas of language. I would like to keep my talk limited to manner or style where the listeners or those who are from different disciplinary area will be able to understand the concept that I'm trying to make. So I work as an assistant professor with a university in Gujarat. I work precisely in language and literature. And today I'm going to talk about, the title of my talk is ELT to ESL, Practice and Scope for Augmenting Language Skills in India. To begin with, English language, when it was introduced by British in India, and even after British left, the language had created a huge fuss in the Indian society precisely because the language was considered a language not as a medium of sharing your thoughts or getting connected with people around or working as a bridge to connect with inter-regional people or with people across the world, but a language became a tool to showcase your eliteness, smartness, knowledge, so-called. Hence, the basic usage of language was lost. Then over the period, multiple theories and methods were introduced in Indian society over the period, over multiple discussions and political issues, so on and so forth. Accepted the language as one of the languages that can be used as a language to share information in the nation. And even after so many decades today, we talk about, India, its development, its progress, and the important role that language plays, precisely English language, that help us connect with people from across the world, because we don't have to learn their language and forget about the world. India is a multilingual country. So it is also important for us to get connected with people in our own country with the help of one common language that many people, most of the people understand. But English is not an Indian language. It's a borrowed language. And the basic concept of a language is when it is not your native language or first language, it is considered second language. So ESL, the title, the word that I've used in the title, which is a technical term. However, the basic concept of an ESL is a person or a speaker has first language or mother tongue or native language, and then ESL, a second language, which becomes the language the person uses, after the first language. But the aspect about India is, in India, we at least use 3 languages. So I'm not yet sure that if we can call English as a second language that we use in India, that people, mostly speak one language at home, another language at school, and third language perhaps as a part of their curriculum, and today or these days, fourth language as for their interest or the requirement because they are living in particular region. The point or crux of my talk is language has a basic purpose that it serves, which is to help you share your information, ideas, or thought with people around. And when we teach language formally in the classroom, that was not so that you mug it up, remember certain grammatical rules, but it is basically so that you are able to communicate. You are able to use the language with the ease that you use your first language. That was the goal. But over the period, the goal was changed. And today, when we are talking about so many advanced theories of teaching and learning language, including AI, you go to India, small towns, small regions, even today, people do not look at English as a language, as a medium of sharing their thoughts or ideas, but as a language that proves your smartness, your intelligence, your so-called eliteness, which has no connection with your knowledge. So, how can we twist or how can we turn the table? And that is to begin with, instead of teaching students that it is very important to use language, English language precisely with certain fluency, you begin by teaching them English is just a language the way we have any other languages in India or across the world, about 7,000 of them. So it is just a language. And once this concept is clear, then we can talk about how a language should be treated simply as a language. And this is the approach that should be used instead of using so-called methods of, fixed methods to teach language certain way, to get results of the so-called teaching methods and style and approaches. For me, it is more important that my students get the very basic concept clear. You are simply learning a language the way you learn any other language, and if we apply this approach in our classrooms, we as a teacher or as linguists will be able to serve the purpose. And this will help our students who are going to be the next generation of the society, will help them understand their knowledge will not be measured with how fluent they are or how proficient they are in using English, but it is more about getting knowledge and simply understanding language as a mode of communication or usage. And for that, there are certain theories that we should apply. And before we talk about students, we should talk about our own academic fraternity. They should learn, or they should, unlearn the idea that the knowledge of English is very important. Rather, they should, to begin with, understand the concept that English is just a language, and we should teach it as a medium of communication and tell the students the same. This is one aspect. Another aspect is, when you go to different disciplines, precisely management discipline, commerce discipline, science discipline, engineering, or management disciplines, they live in another world where they feel their knowledge of their subjective knowledge is more important, but it is not important for them to learn the language that help them communicate that knowledge with the world, or to get better understanding of that knowledge from across the world with the help of the language which is English. So another contradictory, notion. One is, there are academics or there are linguists in India who are struggling to understand the concept themselves, that English is just a language and it should be taught that way. And then there are academics in the same country who are creating an environment, who are in a way passively encouraging the concept that you don't have to learn English. It is more important that you learn your subjective knowledge. And English is not required until students graduate, get out of the college or university and enter in the professional world. So two opposite ideas that are prevailing in the country, these are the approaches and these are the aspects that need more work on, the contradiction that are prevailing in our society with respect to language. So once we work on them, then the real learning begins. And I'll not take much time. I'll conclude in about 1 or 2 minutes. Another aspect about learning a language is, it is just a way that help you connect with the world, whether you consider the language as a second language or English as an additional language, because for a country like India, the word EAL, English as an additional language, suits better. But the very well-known word across the world is ESL, English as a second language. So we need to work more on that also. And there are multiple variations of English that can also be brought out, that today we don't have to precisely imitate or copy British accent or American accent or Canadian accent, or for that matter any other accent that are spoken across the world, because we also have Indianized version of English. And it's not only Indianized version of English. Today we are also talking about English, which is a mixture of an Indian language called Hindi plus English, and another version which is Gujlish, a very regional Indian language. We also have Indianized version. So when we have reached to that level, why are we still struggling with the basic of fundamental questions? Not only that English is no fuss, it is just a language that needs to be learned or you should get proficiency in with respect to correct way of using the language to sound more intelligible, comprehensible, coherent, cohesive, and fluent, and that should be it. Full stop, nothing else. So that is all that I had to say. Thank you very much for listening to me and providing me the platform. Thank you very much, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today and being able to share my thoughts with you all. Please feel free to ask questions, whatever that you have. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Riza. I love your thematic, and I was discussing this with a friend of mine from Global AI Ethics Institute, Dr. Ato Momcilovic from Croatia, and he was surprised. Let me just share a background here in Brazil, so you can have this background also, and you naturally can share your thoughts on this. We have here in Brazil, unfortunately, two major, I believe, different aspects from India. In general, do the English as the second language, as you mentioned. The first aspect is that Brazil, differently from India, did not have a culture previously in an European sense, in a more well-established society as India already had it when the English came from the colonization process. We here had indigenous people. We have a huge amount of indigenous people, and unfortunately, due to colonization here in Brazil, most of this indigenous culture had lost due to the colonization process. So we have some connections with these cultural aspects of the linguistics and the cultural in general of these indigenous people here in Brazil, but most of his histories and most of the culture, unfortunately, is lost due to this colonization process that we have here. In India, it was very much different, because when English came in India was already the one of the first civilizations of the world, with more than 7,000 years or so of history in the Indian Valley and spread in all the Ganges region. And well, this is the first aspect that I'd like to share with you. So Portuguese came here in Brazil, and Portuguese is the most spoken language. We have indigenous language here, but they are not very common. We have some indigenous words currently used on the day-to-day basis, but the most is spoken Portuguese. This is the first aspect. The second aspect here in Brazil, precisely comparison with Indian reality, is English as the second language. We have perhaps about 4 or 5% of Brazilian population who is able to communicate in English. It's a very low number, and I do believe that Indians have a very high number of this population able to talk, due to the same question, the same issue that I just shared with you, the colonization process, which imposed the English language as another language, or the second language, as you just mentioned. So my question to you, my friend Riza, and then I will share the floor once again to Professor Faiz to also make a statement or a question. The question for you, my dear friend Riza, is how the Indian people, how your nation feels about English in general. You mentioned they think it's something snob, or they think it's something for the elite, or are they usual? They see as a day-to-day issue and do not have much of it in general. What are your thoughts on these, my friends?
Thank you very much for asking this excellent question. Because after decades of using language, or considering the language as one of the so-called languages in India, because English has retained that status so far in India, even today there are contradictions. If I talk about the youth, because I teach university students, so on one hand, when you go to metropolitan cities, you get to meet people who are fluent in using English, and they consider or they use English as a medium of sharing their thoughts and information, or as a language of their day-to-day life. For them, English is just another language that they have studied or they use besides using their mother tongue or first language. However, um, when you go to some small towns in India, or when you go to some small cities in India, and precisely with reference to youth, the Netflix generation today, they are under a huge influence of British and Americans, and they are not only highly influenced with their language but also the style. So today for them, English language is not just a language that they should learn. It is a symbol of style, a statement, a status quo that they create around them, or a style statement that they make or prove or establish, not only among their peer groups but also in the society with their family members, extended family member, or in the society. And it is not only youth but also their parents, because today in India we watch a lot of Netflix content, and everyone's under a huge awe of another culture, and the influence that the culture brings does not come simply in terms of clothing or attire or behavior, but a huge influence is also English language. So you will get to see people, or you'll get to meet people who may not understand why they should learn English, but they would want to learn English because if they speak in English, they create a good impression in front of people, and they say, "Oh, do you know I speak very good English?" And when I speak English, they may not even understand what they have said, but for them it is very important that their child or their son or daughter is speaking English. That means they are intelligent. Doesn't matter if they are able to hold meaningful conversation in English. So again, the question is, should we not consider English simply as a language to hold conversation, and why do we create a huge fuss around using a language and making it a status quo, a style statement, and not only in education institution but also largely in the society, in the families? And Thiago, I would really like to mention this. We a few years ago, the late Indian actor, Irfan Khan, he made a film Hindi medium, and that huge Bollywood film was an ironical slap on the Indian society's face, where Indian parents, themselves illiterate most of the times or partly literate, would want to send their children to so-called English medium school at any cost. At any cost. Why? Because they feel they were left behind, and the reason they left behind in their life was language, not knowing English language. And they wouldn't want the same for their child, hence they would go to any extent, they would stoop to any level just to send their daughter to school, and to a good English medium school, by sending or spending lakhs of rupees. The film was made a few years ago, but today also the reality is same. So again, where as a society are we leading, and why are we chasing blindly the race of proving that we also speak English or good English? And a more interesting fact is, if the same people go out, they travel a lot, so when they go out and they realize the entire world does not talk only in English, there are many other languages that the world talks or uses to hold conversation. And forget about the world, in India you go to different state and you will get to meet people who are very proud of using their regional language. So the stark reality or satire or irony, whatever you call, of Indian society is, to begin with, will have to begin by creating a psychological, removing a psychological barrier that the language has created, and making it just a simple, natural, basic way of using a language as a medium of, sharing conversation or information. I think I answered your question. If I could.
Fantastic, fantastic, my friend. So much to thought on this, and I'm very actually I do have a huge happiness to learn a little bit in English, because here in Brazil, unfortunately, despite the fact that I had studied in a nice private school here in Brazil, English in the school curricula is not so very not good at all. Unfortunately, 1 hour, one class, about 45 minutes or so, once in a week, it's not enough to learn English even as a second language. And perhaps even I am not a great speaker in English. I do have my limitations, and I'm aware of it. I am so very happy that I can talk a little bit in English and do this Netflix and music and pop culture in general. I improve a little bit of my English, and enough, at least enough, to communicate with everyone across the world. And I'm so very happy, because do this English, I'm having the possibility, the possibility itself, the possibility to talk with you, to talk with Faiz, to talk with Sudha, to talk with Divya, to talk with everyone across the world, and to know that my world, the world of my community has expanded hugely from several countries across the world. Thanks so much for your thoughts.
Yeah, I think this is what we talk about when we use or look at the language as a medium to get connected, to further our networking, or to get to learn more about the world or about our own culture or tradition. That should be the usage of learning a language, I guess.
Yeah. Jiva just mentioned the importance to have a common language to communicate. Professor Faiz, your thoughts, and if you want, your final thoughts as well. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so hello Raisa ma'am, good to see you. So mine are a few quick comments rather than any questions or anything else. So it's very important that you mentioned this accent as status symbols kind of thing, right? So and it's where you get your inspiration from. It can be Netflix, or I'm not a Netflix person, but this comes to me from cricket commentaries, right? So I'm really familiar, like just to give you an example, hey Thiago Mike, I'm really familiar with the Australian accent. So I can speak that Australian accent of English, right? But it doesn't mean that I stop. And it's where you get your inspiration from. It can be Netflix, or I'm not a Netflix person. Initial points which were made by Raeesabegam again. Language, it is in its purest form, it is a mode of communication, right? So it is an inclusionary practice. You are trying to include more and more people into your network by communicating with them. So it should be that way. It should not be an exclusionary practice that only me and someone else can understand that, and to exclude someone else. It should not be that. It should remain an inclusionary practice and an inclusionary thing rather than excluding someone. So that was just my quick comment which I wanted to make. Yeah.
That was so, sir. I'm really again very happy to see you virtually, perhaps after a while. And the point that you have made is so interesting, that of course language should be inclusive. It should help you connect, network, get better, get to help you in becoming a better person by knowing more or getting more knowledge. However, it is doing otherwise precisely in India. And that is the point where we should begin to work more on. So the research should focus more on this aspect, then focusing more about finding different ways to teach language. How about beginning to remove the psychological barrier that's been created so large and vast that it's covered almost entire society in India. So thank you very much for making that comment, and that's very on point.
Thank you, Professor Faiz. Thank you, Professor Riza, once again. My friend Diva wants to share her comments and final thoughts, if you wish, my friend.
Oh, so I'll take a couple of minutes. First, I'll comment on Faiz's presentation and then Raeesa's, but I'll mix both of them. I'll try and do that. Why I'm doing that is because Faiz, during his talk, he said something about my statement that we don't know our constitutional rights and fundamental rights. That's absolutely true. I work in rural area and I really feel that we are least bit bothered about knowing laws. We are only bothered about getting our things done as and when we want, and that's the limit of understanding. And that's the biggest psychological barrier which we have and which stops us from growing, let alone inclusive or diversified. It won't happen unless you have an open mind on understanding anything. Now I'll come to the psychological barrier part where Raeesa was talking about. This psychological barrier is not because how parents are trying to teach their kids, it's because how they were taught and how their elders were taught. The problem was when we became independent, it was English which was predominant. We never had these kind of written laws. They were written in English without considering the fact that the whole country will never understand what it is written about. So many words being messed up, many words being badly used. We really don't know what would have been the pronunciation if it was in Sanskrit, it was in Devanagari or Tamil or any other language for that matter. It's not about making accent. It's about trying to be at par with the person with whom you're communicating. So I have a lot of friends around the world. All of them have different kind of English, like Thego. Like there is a friend in Italy. His English is entirely different. If he's speaking the same language which I am, it'll take at least 10 minutes for him to even complete a sentence because he have to gather how he has to translate from Italian to English. Okay, he's a good professor, but that doesn't mean that he needs to understand or write in English all the time. That being said, our basic problem lies in the education system at the end. Problem is everything is written in English, especially laws. I actually attended a program in BHU. It is one of the central universities in India, Banaras Hindu University. And since I'm from Banaras, I am very fond of attending these programs. I went there and I was lucky enough to hear everyone cribbing about why is it that lawyers don't talk in Hindi or in local language. How will you do that if your law is written in English? And English words do not have the literal translation in Hindi, Bhojpuri or any other language for that matter. So that being said, I would love to give one example about parents sending their kids to English medium school. My husband was sent to one, but lucky for me, he speaks his mother tongue Bhojpuri as easily as possible. I don't understand most of the times. His mother is so proud of this fact because he speaks with her in the language which she understands. It's all about how parents raise their children. It's all about how teachers teach their kids. And that psychological dilemma, that psychological conflict or everything goes to God knows which place, people don't feel bad about it. My husband, he is an editor. He's an English editor, English paper editor. He's one of the very prominent ones. But he speaks flawlessly in Hindi, flawlessly in Nepali, his third language. Nepalese he speaks flawlessly. That doesn't mean he doesn't know English. But he made it a point, his parents made it a point that they should know their regional language as well, as the teachers also insisted. They used to ask them to write one letter at least a week in Hindi. Tell me how many schools do that? They don't. We just have stopped. I'm speaking about Hindi because I'm a Hindi speaking person. If you are a local language, is Bengali, say any other Kannada, Malayali, any language, they make it a point that their kids write and speak in the same language. It is our fault. I never blame the students. I never blame the society at large. I blame the people who bring up those kids. And I'm really sorry to say that. Even I blame, many a times I blame my parents that they didn't send me to this place or that place. But that being said, I think we have to consider this particular fact that psychological dilemma and psychological conflict is not because of us only, it's because of the whole scenario around us. It makes parents proud. Kids don't know anything. We are teaching them. We are teaching AI, right? We are trying to make it ethical and moral. Remember, we are talking about AI and technology and everything. So if we are trying to make it more moral, let's try and make our parents also a little bit towards this fact that if you speak in your regional language, and if your baby is speaking in the regional language, he or she will not be considered lesser than the person who's speaking in flawless English. And what is flawless English? What is a flawless language? Nothing. We don't know. There is a possibility. My mother speaks a very fluent Sanskrit, but that doesn't mean I will know the same Sanskrit. The moment I say something, if it is wrong, she'll point it out because she's a professor. Raeesa is a professor, same as Sudha is professor. I think Faiz is also a professor of law. So they will point out the wrong. Why don't we do that? If you listen to somebody who's speaking a wrong language, not in abusive language, but wrong in dialect, if you know the correct Hindi, English, Sanskrit, or any other Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, please correct them. That's our fundamental duty. Because Indian Constitution lies on fulfilling the duty and then asking for the rights. So let's remember that. And I think this is the same in Brazil also. It's not about learning a language. It's a whole fight is about making sure that we reach to most of the people. So that is what I wanted to say, and I'm really happy that I could listen to Raeesa's statement. I would love to bring that to my students as well. That language is not a barrier. Don't make it a barrier for your career.
It's a bridge.
Right.
If I can get a minute, Professor Tiago. Thank you. Divya, what you said is very interesting. However, the word that you've used, blame. So I'd like to modify the word. It's a blame game only up to a point. For example, a parent or parents are responsible to send their children, let's say, until class 10 or class 12 or until graduation. But once you are in graduation, you are an independent thinker yourself. So you can't continue blaming your parents, or your parents can't continue blaming the society. And it is basically, FOMO, fear of missing out on something. So the blame is, I don't think it's an appropriate word to describe the situation, but it is more about how after an age, when I'm 20-year-old, can I blame my parents that, oh, it is because of you that I don't speak particular language, or I had to follow the blind rat race of chasing certain so-called rules or ways of living life certain way, or behaving certain way, or speaking certain way. I cannot. Because as an educated person, I have my own thought process, so I choose. I have to choose. I would use the word, I have to choose to decide how do I want to be and how do I want to lead my life now onwards. So again, the psychological barrier was in terms of not the environment that you were provided to get nurtured. It was with reference to how you should get out of the so-called insecurity that has been created around by the society at large, and also entertainment has played a huge role in it. But at the end of the day, everything kept aside and you are as an individual. So how long can you keep blaming your society or your education system or your parents or your teachers, for example? At the end of the day, after the age of 20, 25 years, or 25 plus years, I choose to do what I should be doing. And that independent thought needs to be appreciated. And the correction is, for example, if someone is using mispronouncing a word, let's say in a regional language, so sometimes when you try to correct them, there's always a way to correct a person. So sometimes if you approach a person, however you are trying to correct them in a very decent manner, but your approach of correcting them may make them feel bad about using the language. So it is also very important that in a society where we co-live, with different types and kinds of people, and types and kind also include different mindsets, and the mindsets again does not include how literate you are, what degrees do you have, what profession you are in. It is more about how considerate you are of another person, and how do you try to talk to the person, not in a way that you are enforcing your thought that you have to use this word this way, but in a way to initiate a very healthy discussion. That how about talking or using certain word or particular word certain way, so that healthy discussion should be initiated instead of enforcing the thought that you have to follow certain culture or certain way or certain behavior, or the blame game old way that I am not this because of you or because of him or because of her, or if nothing then because of my luck. That won't work after an age, and that needs to be taught to whether we are talking about students or we are talking about the society at large, I guess. So thank you very much again. Thank you, Divya. I think I've added a few more points.
I would love to counter that. It's lesser a blame game rather than approaching from a sideline. Why I said that is because we live in a society which is called India, and our upbringing is absolutely tremendously different from what is for the same kids in US. So if you are stating that we have that particular right, we do not have. Even if we are 60 and our parents are alive, we have to ask for their permission for so many things. So that being said, society definitely is having an upper hand above you. I'm not saying society at large, but definitely parents and relatives. And that's how our upbringing and culture works. And probably that is the reason we are not allowed, I would say allowed word, to take any decision without at least considering our own parents and partners and family. And that is the kind of culture which we live in. And I am pretty sure that you must be understanding what I said. I may be fortunate enough to have broad-minded parents. You are fortunate enough to be given that right by your parents, that you choose after 20 or after being adult. Tell me how many students or how many kids can say, after 18 I'm an adult and I'm leaving house. Will they be left alone? No. Larger debate, And
yeah, absolutely, Divya. Actually, the point that I was trying to make is not about taking decision. It is about how do you want to see yourself growing, and it is not about disrespecting your parents.
No, I accept. I'm not denying that fact. I'm not saying that.
I'm getting your point. For example, I'll give you my example. I live in a small village, and in my village, even today, girls are not allowed to go out. And when I talk to people around, they say, where did you get the accent from? Because you don't sound Gujarati, you don't sound a girl who lives in a village. So how did you get that? Now, I'm not sure how did I get this. It could perhaps be because I've traveled a lot and I have a lot of international friends, so on and so forth, and about my interests. But I wouldn't even use the word argument, but the point that I was trying to establish is this fluency or my style of speaking or my accent shouldn't become a measure of my knowledge. You'll have to listen to me, you'll have to understand me, keeping aside my accent. And that is the basic thing. And today, the generation is more blindly following accent thing. They are not considering language as a simple medium of sharing their knowledge. They are thinking, and not even they, but their parents or the society at large thinks, if you have to walk with the world, or if you do not want to lag behind in the world, today's globalized world, you must know English at any cost. And that's where I think the problem begins. So I think this is
You are correct, my dear friend Diva and my dear friend Raeesa, in the sense that the language in English as language per se can be seen as a bridge, and the first steps must be taken at some point so everyone can perhaps communicate. Even if it is English, it's French, it's Italian, it doesn't matter. But a language, an additional language, and your own cultural aspect, in your own cultural sense, can improve very much the spectrum of your knowledge, the spectrum of your networking, and the spectrum of your cultural bases and aspects. I say this because I can see how much improved as my own personal experience, and I believe that the same happens with everyone here in this table, virtual table, that we are having this fantastic discussion this morning. It must be a bridge and not a wall, as you both mentioned. And in final thoughts, I can say one thing to my students, to my 640, how much? Let me see how much. 644 students who are currently watching on the several universities. Try to learn. Try to learn a bit more from different cultures, and we do not understand different cultures in our own ground, in our own basis. I'm having a fantastic opportunity here to listen to some Indian friends sharing knowledge, sharing important thoughts, and I am much more richer than when I started in this morning with Professor Faiz, with Professor Divya, with Professor Raeesa, with Professor Sudha, sharing important thoughts. And I'm so very happy for this. And everything that happens in this session could indeed have happened, and as it does, as it did, do a common language between us. And I'm so very happy for this, and so very honored for this. Thanks so much, my friends. Final thoughts, Diva, I want to share, then Raeesa, and then Faiz and Sudha, if you want to share some final thoughts, I will be very happy. Diva, please.
Well, thank you for introducing me to such an amazing group. Everyone has their own aspect to life, to law, to technology, to society, to language, and to life, I would say, at large, because we are living different lives in different areas, and everyone has a different struggle. So that being said, we are fortunate enough to be connected, so let's make others also fortunate and reach out to them and try and think of it as that we are extending families and we are extending connections, collaborations, because that is something which will cater the larger audience, as well as it will give us more knowledge, because more places you go, more you learn, more things you do, more you learn. So at the end, we have to learn. That is the only way till we die. So it's better, let's enjoy learning. And that's something which I keep on doing. And thank you, Thiago, for always recognizing that. And thanks for this amazing session. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you, Diva. Thanks so much. Faiz, the Professor Faiz, can you share your final thoughts, my friend?
Yeah, so it was indeed a very exhilarating experience of last few hours, I guess, with such an esteemed panel. Like Divya ma'am pointed out, it was really good to know about the perspectives of everyone, and a lot of that credit actually goes to you, Professor Thiago, for keeping the topic or the theme so wide. We talked about the social, technological, and legal aspects, right? So and we could connect to each other as well, so that's a wonderful thing. So congratulations to you, Professor Thiago, for having developed this idea, and congratulations to all of us for agreeing with Professor Thiago and being a part of this wonderful idea. So looking forward to many more such conversations, communications, events, workshops, or whatever it may be, with many more such wonderful people, and the ones, of course, who are a part of this virtual table. So thank you so much for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Faiz, for your kind words. My dear friend, Dr. Raeesa, your final thoughts. Can you share it with us, my friend? Thanks so much once again.
Professor Thiago, first of all, I must congratulate you for pulling together such a huge panel of, diverse people from different disciplines, on one table, virtually, however, but it is not a simple task. So many congratulations, and I really look forward to many more of such events where we can have diverse people, experts from different disciplines, different area of expertise, and different walks of life at national and international level, where all of us can get together, discuss, learn, unlearn, and relearn. I think that is the basic process we should all follow, because in order to learn, sometimes as we move on in life, we have to first of all unlearn certain things and then begin with relearning. So the process should continue, and I think such events are the ways that keeps us going, or help us continue the journey of moving ahead, interacting, connecting, networking with people around, learning and understanding them, getting to know them from their perspective. And that is what I think the importance of of meeting to such people. And I was really happy to be able to hear legal perspective or aspect at India and Brazil. So that was a very interesting thing. Thank you very much, Professor Thiago, once again for inviting me, giving me an opportunity to not only share my thoughts but also discuss, interact, and also get to listen to different perspectives, on this aspect. Thank you very much, and best wishes. I hope the event will be successful, and I actually, as Professor Faiz has said, look forward to many more of such events or discussions, whether virtually, but certainly. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you once again, my friend. Sudha, can you share your final thoughts? Are you there? I guess you are.
Yes.
But
Yes, I'm not going to be on camera, but I can speak. This was amazing. This was amazing. I do not expect anything less than this from a Thiago event.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend.
No, it's just when you bring diverse set of people with different perspective, there is always that what Professor Usmani put it as, you have to unlearn and relearn. But this discussion was amazing, and each of us have a sense of reality, and it creates a bias on how we see the world. And so when we hear from somebody else, it just, you connect the dots in your head and you feel like I have to go back and be a different person, a better person. And that's how I feel today. So thank you for including me as part of this amazing event. I feel very humbled, and I hope I get to collaborate with all of you and do something about this. Thank you so much.
You do, my friend. You did, and you do. Thanks so much. Well, just finals. I'd like to say everyone that we are opening a call for the chapter. This conference is now being developed, transformed to a book. And we are in a call for chapters, and the address, the internet address, the internet web page is about the same that this current link, bit.ly / India __ Brazil _ Avanzi, my last name _ book. I will share this in the comments and the description of our YouTube video, but nevertheless, I'd like to share and firsthand this call is now open. Please be aware of the deadlines, but I hope we have many contributions across the world on this fantastic topic. Thanks so much, my friends. We are now finishing the first session, the first panel, and late on this afternoon here in Brazil we'll have a second session, a second panel. I hope to see everyone once again. This was an amazing experience. Bye bye, my friends. See you.
Thank you. Bye.